Today we're going to be looking at this article from the Jasmine brand about Marlon Jackson
Okay.
and the passing of his brother Tito. And, it's a pretty powerful story. It got me thinking a lot about brotherhood and loss and how we deal with memories of loved ones.
Yeah, it's certainly not just another celebrity headline you see every day.
Right.
It really gets to the heart of what it means to have these close relationships and then to experience that loss.
Yeah. And what really got me right away was this detail about how Marlon and Tito were actually joking around on the phone like only an hour before Tito passed away.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like 1 minute you're laughing with your brother and then the next.
It's just so sudden, yeah.
It's just so sudden.
It makes you think about how quickly things can change.
Yeah, and the article even mentions how doctors tried to, do what they could. They tried to use a breathing tube.
Right, to try to stabilize him.
But
Sadly, it wasn't enough.
sadly, yeah, it wasn't enough in the end.
Mm.
But there's this other detail in here that really got to me, and it was about Marlon's tribute to Tito during one of his shows.
Oh, yeah.
He had Tito's hat and jacket placed right there on the microphone,
Oh, wow.
and then led the audience in a moment of silence.
It's interesting how we use objects to connect with those we've lost.
Yeah,
It's almost like having a piece of them still there with us.
like a powerful symbol.
Yeah, and it's something you see a lot across cultures and throughout history.
There's this other thing in the article that I thought was interesting. It mentions the dates that Marlon brought up.
Okay.
September 10th, 2001. That was the last show that he shared the stage with Michael.
Wow.
And then September 10th, 2024, the last show with Tito.
So both on the same date.
I know.
That's kind of eerie.
It gave me chills.
It adds another layer to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that both of those are September
Yeah.
10th. It speaks to how life can be so cyclical. One date can hold incredible highs and devastating lows all mixed together.
Yeah, it's like those dates become these anchors for both good and bad memories. The
Exactly.
happy times are all kind of tied up with the pain of the loss.
And the article doesn't shy away from the emotion of it all either. It mentions that Marlon was in tears while he talked about Tito.
It reminds us that even these famous people who we see as almost larger than life, they experience grief and loss just like all of us do.
Exactly.
And the article says that Tito passed away from a heart attack at age 70,
Which unfortunately is not that uncommon.
Right.
Heart disease is a leading cause of death, so
it's something we should all be aware of for sure.
definitely.
Getting back to Marlon's story, what really strikes me is how he talks about Tito with this mix of sadness and joy.
Yeah.
Like there's this immense grief, but then there are also these warm memories, all these moments of laughter that are clearly so precious to him.
Right. And that's so important for understanding grief, isn't it? It's not about just feeling the pain, but also recognizing all the good things,
Yeah.
all the joy that the person brought to your life.
It's like those memories become even more valuable because you realize how fragile life is and how quickly things can change.
Exactly. Makes you appreciate those good times even more.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the good things that comes out of loss, It makes you appreciate the good times even more because you realize how finite they are.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how you want to be remembered. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
That's a big question.
It is.
I think for me, it always comes back to the connections we make, those moments of genuine love and laughter that we share with people.
Mhm.
Those are the things that really matter at the end of the day, right? Not accomplishments or money, but the relationships we build and the love we give and receive. And that's what's so powerful about Marlon's story. It really shows how strong that brotherly bond can be and how it can shape us even after someone is gone.
And it reminds us that those connections, those shared moments of joy, they can help keep our loved ones alive in our hearts, even after they're not physically with us anymore.
It's like Tito's laughter is still echoing in Marlon's life, and in a way, it's echoing in all of our lives as we hear this story and learn about it.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you think about those connections and how important they really are.
It really does.
And it makes you want to hold on to them even tighter,
Yeah,
Makes you want to savor those moments with the people you care about.
absolutely. And, it's interesting how stories like this often make us think about our own lives,
Yeah.
our own relationships.
Right.
It's like this little reminder to maybe call someone you love.
Yeah,
Tell them how much they mean to you, because you just never know.
things can change so fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while we can't predict the future, we can choose how we spend our present,
Right.
how we treat people, how
Mhm.
we nurture those relationships, and, really express that love and appreciation while we have the chance.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget about that stuff when you're busy with everyday life.
It's true. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day
Yeah.
and forget what really matters, but stories like this kind of shake us up a bit.
Yeah.
They remind us what's important.
And speaking of reminders, there's this other detail in the article that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
It mentions that Marlon keeps a photo of Tito on his bedside table.
Ah.
It's such a small thing, but it's so meaningful.
Yeah.
It shows how much he loved him.
It's a way of keeping Tito's presence alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, how do those little rituals, those personal ways of remembering someone, how do they help us deal with grief?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think those rituals can act like an anchor, a way to connect with the person's memory in a very real way.
Right.
It could be a photograph or a piece of clothing, a favorite song.
Anything.
Anything that makes you think of them and brings comfort.
It's like creating a little space for their memory.
Exactly.
A place where you can go to remember the good times and almost feel their presence again.
And those rituals can be so personal and unique to each person.
Right.
What might seem ordinary to someone else can hold so much meaning for the person who's grieving.
It's not about doing it the right way.
Exactly.
It's about finding what works for you.
It's about finding what brings you comfort and helps you honor their memory in your own way.
And you know what's interesting is that those rituals, they can change over time. What brings you comfort at first might evolve as you heal.
It's true. It's not a static process.
Right? Grief is a journey.
It is.
And the memories themselves, they can become more complex over time.
That's part of what's so fascinating about grief, you know?
Yeah.
It's not about getting over it. It's about learning to live with it, to integrate those memories and that love into your life.
That's beautiful.
It is.
It makes you think about grief in a whole new way.
Yeah.
It's something to be afraid of.
Right.
It's a natural part of life.
It shows how deeply we can love
Yeah.
and how much those relationships affect us.
It's amazing how we started with this story about Marlon Jackson.
No.
And now we're having this big conversation about grief and memory and connection.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
Me too.
They take us to unexpected places.
Yeah, they really do.
And in this case, it's reminded us that talking about grief and loss and cherishing those we love, these aren't just conversations for people going through something terrible.
Right.
These are conversations we should all be having.
Because life is precious.
It is.
And the people in our lives are what make it meaningful.
And as we've seen with Marlon's story, those connections can last beyond a lifetime.
Yeah.
They can even transcend death.
That's a powerful thought. Yeah, it really makes you think about how we carry those we've lost with us even when they're gone.
It really does.
Their stories become a part of our own stories.
Yeah.
It shapes who we are.
And how we see the world.
And sometimes it's just those little things, you know?
Right.
Like a photo on a nightstand or a song on the radio.
Mhm.
Something that reminds you of them.
Yeah, those everyday reminders can be so powerful.
It's not always about those big gestures or the public displays of grief.
It's those small personal moments that really matter.
The ones that keep their memory alive in our hearts.
Exactly. And I think that speaks to how personal grief really is.
Yeah.
There's no one right way to do it.
No timeline.
No journey.
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone.
And grief can show up in so many different ways. It's not always tears and sadness.
Sometimes it's anger,
Guilt.
guiltiment, even relief sometimes.
Yeah. It's important to let ourselves feel all those emotions.
Whatever they are.
Without judgment.
Yeah. Just
Right.
let yourself feel it.
It's part of the process.
Exactly.
It's about giving yourself permission to grieve in your own way and not comparing your experience to anyone else's
Right.
or feeling like you need to rush through it.
Just be patient with yourself.
Yeah, and be kind to yourself.
Let yourself feel everything.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking about this idea of legacy.
Yeah.
It's something Marlon mentioned, and it feels like it's been woven through our whole conversation today.
It has.
Legacy, it's a powerful thing.
It is. It makes you think about the impact we have on the world.
The mark we leave behind.
And not just in terms of achievements,
Right.
but in the relationships we build.
And the love we share.
Yeah. And maybe that's what this all comes down to.
This whole deep dive,
Maybe
cherishing those connections
living with intention.
and making the most of our time with the people we love.
Because at the end of the day, it's those connections, those moments of joy and laughter.
Those are the things that make a life worth living.
Yeah, they really are.
So as we leave you today, we want to encourage you to think about your own legacy
What impact you want to have on the world.
and the relationships you want to nurture.
And remember, even in loss,
Love and laughter can live on.
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.